Welcome back to another episode of the BizMagic Podcast, your place for all things tech in your online business with some solid hits of general biz chat too. My name is Patty Meyer, and I am the CEO and founder of BizMagic, where my team and I support entrepreneurs who are overwhelmed by the back-end tech of their business. We create, implement, and teach the tweaks that help our clients make a bigger impact with less stress. Today, we are diving into a topic that is super, super close to my heart, and that's leadership. So I started what I consider kind of the world of leadership. When I was in high school, I was the stage manager for a production of a chorus line, and I really, really loved it. It was my first musical that I ever did. Actually, it might have been my first play. I might have stage managed for another play, but either case, it was like the first way that I had ever really done any kind of leadership role before, and I really just loved it. And then in my first job, which was 18 or 19. I was an assistant manager in that job. I started as an associate, sales associate, and I was an assistant manager within 6 months. And that's kind of how it's been for me. So no matter what I've done when I've worked in places, I've always ended up being a manager of some sort. So that means over the past 25 years or so, right, I've kind of gotten probably okay. Like, that's my humble whatever. Like, I'm probably pretty good at this whole management thing. So whether you're leading a team of 20, you're working with contractors, or leading yourself, because that counts too, I think that being an effective leader is a skill that you can build. It's not something that, I think there are parts of it that you're kind of born with, leadership and stuff like that, but it very much is a hard skill that you can build. And so in the episode today, I want to talk about the 4 key skills I've learned over the last 25 years that I think have made me into a better leader. And these aren't like just theoretical, right? These are battle tested in the trenches of all kinds of management environments. So I'm hoping that by the end of this episode, you'll walk away with some practical takeaways so that you can become more confident and capable as a leader. So that's my goal today in the episode. So let's get started. So the first skill that I want to talk about in leadership is emotional intelligence. It's also known as EQ, which is emotional quotient. And so if you've ever kind of thought about leadership as like, okay, it's about understanding people more than numbers and spreadsheets and all of that. That's true. That's what this is about. So emotional intelligence kind of boils down to 4 things. It's self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. So here's why EQ, emotional intelligence, is a game changer. People follow leaders that they feel connected to. And when I say follow, I mean they want to work with, they trust, they listen to, they support. So if your team feels like they know that you get them, whether you're giving them grace because they're struggling or you're celebrating their wins, they trust you. They feel more invested in your work and they want to work with you. So if you're feeling tension during a conversation, one of the ways to kind of embody this kind of leadership style, right, of emotional intelligence is you kind of pause and you ask yourself, like, what is really going on here? You want to practice empathy because it doesn't just help other people, but it makes you calmer and it makes you a more centered leader, right? So a lot of this is about basically things that you can get in therapy if you're so privileged to be able to do so. But understanding how to be self-aware, pay attention to how you show up, how you speak, all of that. That's all really super important. Okay, so next is delegation. And I have to be really honest in saying that this was really hard for me at first in my business for a long time. And I think I said that with a straight face, but the reality is that this is still more hard for me than I would like to admit. But when you're running a business, especially if you're a solopreneur or maybe if you're like a perfectionist, it's tempting to think it's easier if I do it myself, right? But the truth is that it's not. it's not easier. Sometimes it feels faster. Sometimes you're like, oh, well, I don't have to offload this stuff, but it's really not. It's not just about handing off tasks, right? Delegation is about trusting your team or your contractors, or your tools even, right? Delegating to your tools, to take ownership. It's focusing on tasks that drain your energy, things you're not great at, repetitive skills that you don't need to have your personal touch with. Those are things that are really a safe place to start delegating. But delegation is super, super game changing for your business because it gets you out of your own way, and it allows and encourages people to become invested more in your business. And so a quick kind of pro tip for this is to start small. Delegate one task at a time and give clear instructions, and then let it go, right? Micromanaging is not delegation. It's just a different form of doing it yourself. And so it can help when you're delegating to think about what information you would need if you were the one doing the task, right? If somebody was delegating it to you, what kind of information would you need them to give you? So make sure you provide all of that information. Know that you've given all of that. And then I think you can feel a little more comfortable letting go. That's what's worked really well for me. So delegate, delegate, delegate. It's a game changer. It puts you in the CEO role, and it makes people feel like you actually trust them, which makes you a better leader. So next we have communication, which is the foundation of every leadership skill. You can have great ideas and intentions, but if you can't communicate them clearly, they won't go anywhere. I think that effective communication, it's about clarity. It's about listening more than you speak. It's about adapting your style to suit the people that you're communicating with. Right? So not everybody communicates the same way. Some people need bullet points. Some people need a big picture view. Some people need really granular detail. And I think part of being a strong leader is communicating the way that others need you to communicate, not expecting others to adapt to your style because you're in charge. I think that's a mistake that a lot of leaders make, is they feel like, well, I'm in charge, so you should know how I want things and how I need things. But that's not true. Being a successful leader is really about figuring out how you can show up and communicate with your team or with whoever it is that you're trying to communicate with. And I think the pro tip here is the next time you send instructions or feedback, ask the person to repeat them back to you in their own words. And that isn't micromanaging. That's making sure that they've understood you. It's making sure that you've communicated in a way that works well for them and connects with that delegation bit, because it means that you can also then let go. Okay. So then the last thing that I have that I've learned, right? Remember, these are all things I've learned. So these are things that's taken me time to get there. And this last one is adaptability. So I think that if the last few years, especially last year for me, have taught us anything, it's the ability to pivot. And then it's not just nice to be able to pivot, it's a necessity, right? Ever since COVID, everything changed and we had to be adaptable. We had to pivot all the time. And I think that adaptable leaders, they don't cling to the idea of how we've always done it, right? They stay open to new tools, new methods, new ideas. And believe it or not, this was actually one of the hardest things for me. I think as somebody who's coming more and more to terms with the fact that I likely have ADHD, I've found that, and this is one of the ways actually I identified that I likely have ADHD, but I'm extremely structured and routine. And being that way leads me to success better. So when I have to adapt or I have to pivot, it can be kind of anxiety inducing for me to have to recalibrate. So I struggle with this still, but it is one of the things I pride myself on that I've really worked hard to become more comfortable with. Early in my management days, I remember somebody complaining to somebody higher up that I was inflexible. And it wasn't actually until probably the last couple of years that I'd always remembered that, like, I'm not, you're inflexible, like, don't call me that. But all these years later, I kind of had this point where I was like, no, actually, I was inflexible, and sometimes I am. And I actually was able to start understanding why. And therefore I was able to start doing something different about it. So I think it's important to like embrace the idea of experiments in your business. When you try something new, try framing it as a test instead of a permanent change, because that makes things feel a little less scary, right? It makes it easier to pivot if things don't work out, and it keeps you from getting stuck in like analysis paralysis. So yeah, those are the 4 skills that I feel have really helped my own leadership journey and helped me show up as a leader in my business and my life in all sorts of ways. So as a quick recap, we have emotional intelligence, delegation, communication, and adaptability. And I think here's the thing about leadership. It's not about being perfect, right? It's about showing up. It's about learning as you go. It's about having the courage to do what's right for your team and your business. And I think that's a big key, right, with leadership as well, is that when you know that you're not perfect, when you know and understand and admit that you're still figuring this shit out, people respect you. People look up to you in a different way because you're saying to them, this is attainable too, right? Like you can be a leader. Any one of us, and we're all already leaders in so many places in our life, right? Whether you're leading your kids, whether you're leading your dogs when you're going for a walk. I was going to say cats, but you can't lead cats anywhere. Whether you're leading your horse to the water, right? I don't know where I'm going with this. But my point is that there are so many ways that we show up as leaders in our everyday life. And so the more that we can kind of look at that and embrace that and step into that, I think the more successful we can be. Because I think it's transferable skills, right? It's remembering that we already have this skill. We just have to hone it. And that's a way to be successful. So if you found today's episode helpful at all, I would love for you to share it with a friend or a fellow business owner. If you have some leadership skills that changed the game for you, feel free to email me at patty@bizmagic.co, or you can message me directly on Instagram at BizMagicCo. I love learning from you and being flexible and adaptable and communicating with you. And please, please, please don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and rate. All of those things matter. And always, as always, thank you for listening, and I will talk to you soon.